Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from AnthonysCustoms, and for this review, we are looking at the Figma Archetype Next He. So this is the new blank body, which is a male from Figma. That's what it is. It's kind of a weird name, but don't worry about it. And so here's the thing. Figuarts made one not that long ago, and it was pretty cool overall, and I had some issues. I said I probably would prefer to have a little bit more anatomy, a little bit less blank body panel type situation, and so I thought these would be a nice alternative to have a little bit more anatomy on them, and they might be a pretty cool thing to have in conjunction with the Figuarts. So I got them, and now I'm going to review them. There are some good things and there are some bad things, so we're going to get into all of that, so make sure you stick around for the whole review, so you know if you want to buy these or not. So let's get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about just over 5.5 inches, which makes him right around 14 centimeters. So he's not especially large, but he's probably good size. I mean, he fits in with most Figmas and most other imports, so no big deal there. In terms of paintwork, there is none to speak of. He's all one solid color. It's close enough to a skin tone, but as you can tell, I mean, I'm not the most neutral skin tone. I'm a little pale, but you can see it's kind of orangey. It's not like the Orange Good Smile exclusive edition, but it's not the best skin tone in the world. It'll be sufficient, but that's about it. A little bit more in lines with cartoons or anime, which I guess makes sense. And in terms of accessories, he doesn't have a whole bunch. The SH Figuarts ones I reviewed were the special editions with extra stuff, but they still come with a good amount for the normal editions. These guys, not so much. We have just 6 hands total. We have the 2 fist hands, 2 loose hands, and then 2 gripping / maybe trigger finger hands. That's it, in addition to the Figma display stand. Nothing else, not a whole lot to talk about, so it's a little bit disappointing. I was hoping for a little bit more, but they did not deliver. So in terms of the sculpt, as I mentioned, these guys do have a little bit more anatomy. You can see a little bit more musculature. I was hoping that would be a good thing, and in some cases it is. You can see the abs are sculpted pretty well, the biceps, triceps, shoulders. There's definitely some definition in there. However, the overall anatomy is pretty terrible. If you look at the pecs in relation to the abs, they're way too narrow. They don't look right at all. It looks like he's constantly shrugging his shoulders the way they have this floating torso piece. It just doesn't look right. The neck also, very, very weird. If you look up close, he's got some kind of, like, I don't know if those are the tendons supposedly connecting to the collarbones, the clavicles, but the clavicles are really, really close together in the front and really low, and then these tendons just kind of terminate right there, and it looks very strange. Then he's got just weird proportions throughout his hips, or his thighs, and lower legs are oddly, I don't know, the ratio is weird. It's just, there's something off about just about everything about this guy. It looks very strange. Once you pose him, you can kind of hide some of those things, but it just looks odd. And then, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure the head is too small. It seems to be very small to me. Like, the head is equal to only one side of his chest, which is already too small. And it just feels very, very strange. So that's just in the anatomy portion. And then we have other issues, like the shoulders are the most basic and not best shoulders that Figmas do. The hips are okay, we'll get to that, but you can see they're very obvious. You can see the hips coming through, you can see the sockets in there through the sculpt, so that's not good. And then we have these giant gaps in the back because of the design, the engineering. We have like a tube that comes out in an angle from inside the torso, and then you can see the joint in there pegs into that tube. And that does allow him to crunch a little bit better, or to lean back a little bit better, but that's obviously no good. You have these giant holes in his torso. That's really weird. So I don't care for that very much. So let's run through the anatomy, the articulation. We already talked about the anatomy. The head, we can just pop it off real quick. Maybe not so quick. There we go. So we have the neck, and then we have the straight peg that goes into the neck, and then a ball peg that goes into the head, and then it's connected by a ball hinge. So you would think that that would afford pretty good range of motion for the head, and it can, but look how big the neck is in relation to the head. It's humongous. This guy has the fattest neck in the world, and so it limits the articulation a whole lot. Tiny head, fat neck, not great combination. You can pose it some, of course. It'll be posable, but that fat neck is really, really problematic. And then the neck itself is on a ball hinge, but the hinge itself sits really far forward. It's at the very beginning part of the torso, all the way up here. So the entire back part of the neck cavity is hollow. So he can only lean forward a little bit, and it's just very awkward when he does. So I don't know what they were thinking, but that anatomy is not good. The articulation is not super functional. We have a ball peg that connects to the torso, and then the ball hinge, which connects with a straight peg down into the bicep. So you get your bicep swivel right there, and you get your shoulder, which it can raise fine, that's no problem, and you have that ball peg for extra range. So it's functional. It's just not the best looking. I don't know why they keep doing that ball peg in there rather than just giving a true ball hinge into the shoulder and then a true bicep swivel. It just doesn't look great. It can be posed away, like I said, but it's not great. It's very basic and not ideal. Single hinge for the elbow, which works fine. Doesn't look the best, but it's definitely good enough. It's okay. I'm not sure about the anatomy right here. This muscle, the one that goes from like right here, it's technically the same muscle group as that little triangular piece that's supposed to come around and go into the forearm. But the way they sculpted it, it's very lumpy. Doesn't look quite right. For the wrist, we have a ball hinge, which works just fine. No real issue there. And we already talked about the torso. It works well, but it's super ugly and very weird. You can rotate it around. So it's functional, just doesn't look good. For the lower torso, we have a ball peg, which just lets it move around a little bit. And then this crotch piece is floating, but it doesn't really move at all, and it creates odd look. It just looks very weird. I don't know. This whole figure is just really weird looking, and I don't care for it very much. I know that's kind of subjective, but I feel like most people are going to feel like that once they have it in hand. So you have your standard fixed ball pegs with the little sockets for the hips. You can see that in there. So the hips can move around pretty well. That's not really a big deal. You can rotate the thigh around those sockets, and then of course you can move the socket around on the ball peg itself. You get decent range. Not the best, but it's not bad, so I can't really complain too much about that. The hips are okay. The knees, I really don't like the way they put the kneecap on there. It looks okay when the leg's not bent, but when it is bent, it just kind of looks weird. Unhuman. Inhuman? Inhuman's not a thing, unless you're talking about Marvel Universe. I guess it is a thing, isn't it? I don't know. It's not great. I don't know. Everything they did on this figure is just weird to me. I'm not sure. It's just not great. You have good range, but it's not ideal. Something about it is weird. And for the ankles, you have your standard hinge, which has really good range, but you can see the peg's fairly vertical, so when you rotate the foot, you don't get the best ankle rocker. And it doesn't really allow you to swing it around, so it's not ideal, again. And then we have a toe hinge, which is better than I expected it to be. But it's still very weird. The way it offsets, it swings down rather than up. So the whole thing kind of comes forward, and it just doesn't work well. I don't know. It's not terrible, I guess, and they don't cost that much, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's not what I wanted it to be. Just like the Figure Arts one didn't really look like a real human. It looked like a blank body, which is okay. This looks more like a human. It's just really weird looking human. So again, it's just kind of not satisfying what I expected or wanted these things to be. I suppose other people may have different opinions, as that is often the case. But for me, I don't know, I'd say they're probably a pass. Unless you really want a blank body, this is probably nothing you really need to pick up. And I kind of wish I didn't, other than for the sake of reviewing it. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So come back for that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.